Some of you may remember us as the Pew Center on Global Climate Change. Just this past November, we underwent a rebranding effort and have transitioned to the Center for Climate and Energy Solutions. The reason for this is that, all good things must come to an end. The Pew Charitable Trust funded us. They gave us very generous funding for 13 plus years. But they decided that about a year and a half ago, they let us know that it was probably time for us to stand on our own, and that they, in fact, were themselves now a 501c3, and were doing work in the environment and climate space. So to avoid confusion, they asked us to take on a new name. Everything else about us remains the same, except for two very important things. Our name has changed, and our funding structure has changed. But other than that, we're the same people, still led by Eileen Clausen. The same senior management is still in place. And we still do the same things, which I think most of you are familiar. We do policy analysis, we publish reports, we publish research. We have in-house scientists, in-house economists, and we work very closely with the business community. Okay, supposed to go? There we go. This is our Business Environmental Leadership Council. So we were founded in 1998, and we were really founded on the premise that to solve the climate change issue, you had to have the buy-in of the business community. And whether you're talking about from a policy perspective or from a technological perspective, these were the companies, these and others, that were either going to have to support some kind of legislative proposal, or they were going to be the ones that would develop and deploy the technologies that would ultimately solve the issue. So when we started the Pew Center in '98, we had 13 companies, and that was a very big deal at that time. We now number 42. These companies collectively account for, I was going to look at my numbers here, they have combined revenues of over $2 trillion, and they employ over 4 million employees. So, just to sort of transition, I think Peter and I were talking about this before the session started. Sustainability has really evolved for companies. Originally, 40 years ago, it was largely driven by compliance concerns, regulatory concerns. And then it sort of morphed into, well, it's kind of good for our reputation. If we're seen as sustainable, we can get a good bump off of that. And then what I think we've seen over the last 10 years is companies have really become convinced, and the business case increasingly shows it, that sustainability equals dollars on the bottom line. And so, from companies from GE, who launched their eco-imagination on down the line to utilities, they understand that weaving sustainability throughout their corporate culture is a win-win. And so to that end, they increasingly wanted to find a way to engage their employee base. So Make an Impact was born. What is Make an Impact? Well, a little bit of history. This program was actually started by Alcoa in Australia back in 2005, 2006. At that point, at that place in time, Australia was going through a severe drought situation, and water, very important to a lot of businesses, not the least which is Alcoa. So they undertook this education effort with their employees, and it was pretty successful. And so then they decided they wanted to introduce a similar program in the U.S., but they wanted to partner with an NGO to do that. So they came to us, and I like to think of this program as really it's actionable education. And so I think it dovetails very nicely with a lot of the conversations we were having earlier today. So we now have 4 corporate partners. Their logos are listed there. And so what I'll do here is I'll give you an overview of some of the primary elements of the program. I'll talk a little bit about our approach to delivering this and some of the challenges that we've encountered and why we think it works and is perhaps a very good model. for going forward. Okay. So the program essentially has three elements. It has a customized website and content. It has a best-in-class carbon calculator. It has, as I said, this actionable education component, pardon me, ongoing education. And I think, as this sort of picture shows, we have this one element of the program that we call In 3 Words, where we invite employees and or community members to submit a photo of themselves or their family in 3 words, and then an accompanying little paragraph describing what they're doing. And so what we really have tried to do with this program is to create a safe entree for people to hear the information. And, so when we go in, when we create the program for a company that we're working with, and when we go to their location and conduct a workshop or launch event, as we call them, we really don't lead with climate change. And this was a little tricky when I was going on behalf of the Pew Center on Global Climate Change. But, I would say right up front, look, I'm not here from Washington to tell you how to live your life. I'm from the Pew Center on Global Climate Change, pretty clear where I come down on this issue, but I'm not here to have you have a come to Jesus moment. Quite frankly, I don't really mind what motivates you, but what you need to understand is that, energy is the lifeblood of your business. And when people talk about sustainable, for you, that could mean having a job next month or next year. And a lot of these guys, and women, this is generational. They've been smelting aluminum, it's been in their family for generations. And so that begins to provide an opening where maybe they will listen to what we have to say. So anyway, so that's sort of, this doesn't go very well. So this just sort of shows the In 3 Words. And again, we try to utilize this peer-to-peer learning. Each website for each company, the underlying foundation elements are the same, but for each company, we make it culturally relevant to their company, and we try to weave in some of the things that they find most important and that they want to relay to their employees. This is Bank of America's site. I've just circled over there the local resources. So for every location that we do a launch event, plus some others that they've identified, we actually go in and populate with as many local resources as we can find. So everything from ride sharing to farmers markets to people who do home energy audits to local or regional tax incentives that may exist on up to the federal tax incentives as well. But again, everything we do, we really try to make it relevant to the people that we're talking to. As the program has evolved, we have tried to be very flexible. And each of the companies that we work with, I will say, has taken this program and used it in a little bit of a different manner. So Alcoa certainly uses this program as an external, it's both an internal and an external facing program. So they use it to engage their employees, but they also use it to engage community members. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment, but we've created this whole schools challenge with Alcoa, but as part of that, when we built out those materials, we then, at their instigation, created this sort of student center. And the other thing I'll say is that for companies and those of us who work with companies, companies are really big on employee volunteerism, and they promote volunteering within their employee base in a big way. So if you're working with a company, whenever you can tie your initiative into employee volunteerism, it's a win-win for the company. And every company wants to be able to measure what they're doing. Employee volunteer hours are an easy measurement for them, and they're good at it. So what we've tried to do is to take this program and say, okay, how can we take the information, the education component that we've created, hand it off to their employees and let them take that into the community, maybe into the schools, in the local community advisory boards, and share that information. Then they become the message multipliers. And I think Karen was talking about this earlier today, and I believe this wholeheartedly. Behaviors can lead to attitudes, and that's another sort of approach that we try to weave in here. So underlying this, we built a carbon calculator. Most of the companies that we work with inventory their own emissions. Companies have a saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So we, sort of took that and said, okay, well, let's do this. So let's give people a starting point. So we built a carbon calculator. We conducted focus groups before we did this. One of the things that we heard was, I'm not really sure that understanding my carbon footprint is going to be a big motivator for me. Just doesn't really matter. But a lot of people said, perhaps if you quantify dollar savings, so if you can tell me if I reduce my carbon footprint by this much, it will equal this much in dollar savings, that might, antagonize me a little more or get me a little more interested. So that's what we endeavored to do. So throughout this calculator, we built a two-tiered calculator. There's a simple version. Not surprisingly, most people do that one. There's a detailed version, which requires that you have your utility bills and whatnot in front of you. As you're calculating, and many of the calculators do this, it compares you to the national average. And again, this gets to sort of the power thing, and we're exploring that more. But so it compares you to the national average. It also tells you throughout the calculator what your potential savings could be as you're going through. At the end of the calculator, it gives you a list of personalized recommendations. So again, like the power thing, these are smart recommendations. If you said that you don't own a car, it's not going to tell you to drive less. It knows how you answered. And we try to also then say, well, if you did this, if you commit to, and we give a whole list of commitment pledges, things you could do. And then we also calculate. If you pledge to do this, then you could save this much in terms of CO2 equivalent and this much in terms of dollars. And we tried really hard because, we're down in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're in Bellingham, Washington. We're all over the place. We're in Davenport, Iowa. And people can't just go out and buy a new Energy Star rated refrigerator. So, so we want to say, look, pull your refrigerator out and vacuum the coils. Did you know you could do that? And that will increase the efficiency of your refrigerator? Anyway, for someone who usually thinks I'm really quick, I think I got like 4 minutes. So now we've tried to take the calculator and make it even a more simple version. There's lots of opportunities that come up for partnerships. So with Entergy, based down in New Orleans, they are on the NCAA steering committee for the men's Final Four. It's going to be held at the Superdome. And so they asked us to create a pledge list. So this pledge list will be distributed to the 3,000 volunteers that will participate in the NCAA tournament. And they can check off things that they would commit to do. And we can quantify, aggregate those savings. This is just a snapshot. We did the Schools Challenge with Alcoa. It was very cool. We did 4 states, 5 facilities that Alcoa pinpointed. Each facility targeted 3 middle schools. So it was, 4 states, Indiana had 2. So 4 states, 15 schools. We had over 8,000 kids and family members participate in this. It ultimately ended up with Senator Dick Lugar recognizing 2 of the employees at the Alcoa plant, one of the Alcoa plants that participated. So, the other element is, as I said, I think I've kind of touched on some of this stuff. the workshops, train the trainer sessions. You know, I think it's just really important to say that people love to compete. People love to feel empowered. I'm trying to rush through. Engage, educate, empower. So, I mean, I think the bottom line that we think this program is working as well as it is because we do know our audience. We keep the program very relevant to everyone. It's actionable education, and it's rooted in the corporate culture. So it's, you know, it's being delivered top down, bottom up. I'll just skip over this. So I think, you know, I would just end with saying, and, you know, we touched on this with some of the other speakers today, but good communication cuts through the clutter. It doesn't add to it. And so when we're going in and we're talking to these people, I think it's very important that we try to pluck on an already existing responsive chord, something that people can relate to and that's not threatening to them. And so coming at them through the lens of their employer, and their employer always has a senior executive management person who gets up and talks about the business case for this. So I think that having them understand that it's important to their employer and hearing that and hearing what their employer is doing is important. I won't get into this, so I'm happy to share this with anyone. There are certainly challenges. Yeah. Yep. That's me. Sorry.